For the long straight blocks, this is going to really just use the strips that you have. This is all about just long and straight strips. This one has a little bit of an angle on it, so I'm not going to be using that. You want something that is a little bit wider, so you don't, have a super skinny tiny thing if you don't want, which it makes it a little bit hard to work with. You do want to kind of keep them the same length if you can, so sewing them together is a little bit easier. But for this, really, it's about having fun with your long straight pieces. Now this has a little piece at the end, and I'm going to go ahead and use that. That's just adds some interest to what I have sewn. So, let's see. I've got 2 right here. I'm going to trim this off. So if you see, this piece was all cut off from something else, and now I have 2 long straights like this, and then I've got another one that is like this, but it matches this one, so I don't want to put them together. So I'm just going to put it right in the center. Now what I'm going to do is just sew these all together and then give them a good press. All right, now that I have this all sewn together, I am going to just start pressing it. I'm going to press it so all my seams are going the same direction. That's not necessarily needed, but it just helps me keep it straight when I'm sewing it to other pieces. All right, so now that this is all pressed, I will be doing some trimming. So what I'm going to do to trim this is I'm just going to kind of find one side that I can get a straight line on, and I'm going to use the mat as my guide. Just make sure I have enough pressure on the ruler that it doesn't skip over. So that is my straight edge right there. Now I can use that on my ruler or just scoot it on the mat if I need. So what I want to make sure that I trim down to the smallest part. I don't want any gaps. I don't want to miss that in any of the seams coming up. So I'm just going to trim that edge off. Then what I can do here is just trim it so it is straight on the ends. You can look at the sizes that are needed or required for the quilt. Since this is improv, we're going to be doing some filler pieces, and so I'm not worried too much about the size of it. I'm going to just trim it so it's straight. Later on, when I'm adding it to the quilt, I can trim it down again. I could maybe cut it in half and have 2 pieces. So for right now, I'm just going to leave it like this. I've got a lot of strings here. That is one way of doing a long and straight quilt block. Another way you can make those blocks is to use your really long pieces or strips that you might have. So the previous block I used strips that were about, I think, 5 inches or so, and put those all together. For this one, maybe I'm going to go with around that size. So I'm just going to trim that off. Oh, I've got this that's already been sewn together, and that seems to be about the right size. I am going to flip these though, so it's alternating. So now I've got a kind of a pattern going, which is a little bit fun. And then I have this as well. So what I'm going to do is just sew these really long strips together. All right, now that I have all my strips sewn together, I'm going to go ahead and start pressing this. I can put all the seams to one side, or I can just lay it down how it wants to go, whatever works best for you. Pressing isn't, you just really want it flat, and make sure that nothing's been buckled or folded over improperly so you don't get any puckers in your quilt. All right, so now I can trim this one. So this one I'm going to keep really long, so I'm just going to trim up the sides as using the shortest piece as my guide. So my shortest piece was this piece right here. So that is where I trimmed it up. So then looking at the right side, I've got this blue is kind of the shortest piece here. So that is what I'm going to use for that edge. All right, so this block looks pretty good. If I need to, I can trim up the bottom and the top off, but that gives you a good idea of what you can do with your long and straights.